Basically, what I wanted to talk about was okay, human nature, good and evil, all that kind of thing. Reason why is because I've been watching, and not so much watching as to listening. Now that I'm back at work, I basically listen to. I need stuff to listen to, so I'm not really when it comes to true crime. I don't really I'm not like a fan of it. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of it. Like, oh wait, like how some people talk about true crime is like they talk about like the craziest shit that like people do that's super evil, and like it, as if they're like fascinated about it. And I get there's some dark fascination with criminals. I don't, or like psychopaths, that kind of thing. I don't really have that form of fascination. I have more of a like a curiosity of like how people can commit these crimes, like because I have an interest on trying to prevent the crimes from happening in the first place, whether it be raising your kid right, or people learning about what it is to be human, or what empathy even means. Like all of these questions are like legit questions, like why should we care about our fellow human beings and stuff like that. So like is that like watching all this true crime stuff has been one of the things that kind of like some of the crimes that I see happen, it doesn't seem like people are doing it because it's evil and they want to do it is they want to do it because it's evil. It's more so less personal. Some people who causes or do these heinous crimes, I see them sometimes as victims in some ways. Not in the sense that, like, not more victims than they're victims usually, but victims in their own way. Um, and then there's a curious video that I also watched. Cosmic Skeptic. I watch him a lot. He is so interesting. The guy is interesting when it comes to like talking about morality, or secular morality in that case. He's basically as you probably can guess, like an atheist. More skeptic is more the right word, but I think he's basically a atheist YouTuber who talks about like morality and objective. He's had interest in topics on like whether or not objective reality is real or subjective, like, or if stuff like veganism and stuff like that. And I feel like he's pretty, I gotta say that he's pretty solid in his foundation when it comes to that. So I like watching his videos on that. Sometimes annoyingly so. Sometimes I watch his videos and he'll be talking about something, and like something that pertains to morality, and you can't, like, it goes so deep to the point where it sometimes feel like you don't know why you're even talking about like that kind of stuff. And when it comes to philosophy, like I've said in the past, I only really care about practical philosophy. I don't care too much about philosophy just for the sake of curiosity. Hold on a second, the drop is about to be I hope it's not too loud, but I hope it's not too low as well. But yeah, but those two things basically, but in the video with Cosmic Skeptic, what he was talking about was basically the topic of donation. So if you choose not to donate, it's the same as letting people die. Like you're is like the exact same. So like the analogy that he gave is that if you had like $100 sneakers, and you saw like a person drowning in a lake, and you have the ability to save them, but you don't save them for the specific reason because you don't want to waste or ruin your $100 sneakers and waste all that money. If you choose not to save that person, like most people would say that that's evil. Like that person, like $100 sneakers is not worth like a life. You can't trade that in for a life. So his argument, and forget the guy's name because he was quoting a person, but um, he was saying that if you don't, like, that is the same. Then that person died because you don't want to ruin your sneakers. It's the same thing as letting a person from another country die because you don't want to donate something worse, like $5. And so he was really getting on the case of like, if you don't donate ever, then you are basically immoral because you have the obligation to, you have the moral obligation to help another person. When it comes to that argument, of course, there is a flaw with that argument. I think it's comparable in some ways, but I don't. There's a problem. There's another problem with the argument, and the problem with that argument is how abstract that is. It's like, it's not. First of all, you're not the person. There's a principle of you are not the person causing the evil. So it does a if there's a person who drowns and say, okay, so I gotta rewind back because he did make a point in saying that depending on how demanding it is to save the person's life does measure into whether or not the person's whether or not you have the moral obligation. So for example, if not only your $100 sneakers would be ruined, but let's just say for some insane reason your car would be ruined, and you rely on your car for your livelihood, then the more demanding the option to save a person's life is, the less the less moral obligation that you have. And so like that's basically the problem with the analogy, is that you're like, the person's not, ultimately speaking, the person is not dying because of you. You're not killing that person. And I know this is actually controversial, but there's a difference between you killing a person and then you letting a person say die or suffer, or in the people in Africa case where, okay, if you don't donate this amount of money, like, then these people will die. That's not really it's like TLS says, it's not really comparable to the other analogy of like letting a person die from the sneakers, but it's like, that is like, you have no guarantee that that person's going, not only you have no guarantee that if you don't help them then that person will die, and you don't have any guarantee that the money that you give will exactly save their life, if that makes sense. It's kind of difficult to wrap your head around. But my whole point in this is that, like, so what Squirrel Rogue said, I think of course I'm gonna be coming from my own worldview. I think that selfishness is like kind of viewed unfairly, because like everything does have to be like selfish. He kind of beat me to it, but I think that everything is a little bit self-centered, and I'll explain why. But before we start, I do want to talk about, like, okay, what do I mean by good and what do I mean by evil? So good is simply caring about the well-being or attributing to the well-being of other people. So is normally what is seen as good, because you can get very trapped into like, okay, well, if good just means like, we still have like some kind of religious indoctrination or dogma that good is like whatever this God tells you is good. But I think good is, generally speaking, the promotion of another person's well-being, promoting another person's well-being, or in any kind of way, whether it be by feelings or by like action, usually by action. But that's what we describe as good. And it doesn't stop with humans as well. it also goes to animals because animals are intelligent. That's another road, but like obviously like fish, cows, pigs, we eat them. They don't see us as good people. But evil is of course the reverse or opposite of good, where you're causing suffering to other people. You either causing even then that's not a straight definition, but like unnecessary suffering to other people, or chaos. So I'm interested in more so the I don't know if so my position on whether or not if human beings are generally good or if they're generally evil. And the answer is obvious. Like for me, it's obviously both. Like that's the obvious answer. Um, there's some good in human beings that is born out of selfishness. In my opinion, I might be wrong about this. I don't think I am because again, I'll explain. And of course, I think there's a possibility of evil. There's like we can fall back on evil depending on again selfishness. So when I say that good has to be self-centered, this is what I mean. Psychopaths are so the misconception that people have about psychopaths. We could be neither too. Yeah, but that will also be cheating the question. You will be basically saying, well, good and evil are just concepts. At first, at least, neutral. Yeah, I would say so. At first, maybe. But that side, I think the misconceptions that people have of psychopaths is that they do not, or that is that how should I say? Psychopaths are not actually immoral, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've thought about this because when psychopaths are amoral, but they're not immoral. So the reason why I say this is because if you're using the definition of good to tie into empathy, then and psychopaths have no empathy, then they're not doing things generally because they're not doing it intentionally. They're not making a moral action. You're never going to have a psychopath that is making a moral action that they believe is good. So they're not going to even if they give money to the poor to impress some other person that they're trying to get in good relationship with. They're not doing it because they believe it's good in the same way that a person who is an actual good person who understands empathy might be doing it. So, with that understood, I think that even being good is self-centered because the reason why people do good is that they don't is usually for me because you don't want to feel bad for not doing it, or you want to feel good for doing it. Either of those two ways. And I hope that it doesn't sound sociopathic because I don't think it is. If I were, and this is for me personally, if I pass by a homeless, a homeless person begging, like a beggar, and I don't give money to them even though it's Christmas and I have enough money and I got tipped a very fair amount at my job, and I still choose not to help another person have get some money or sharing the money like that, I will feel bad as a person, and I don't like feeling bad. It's kind of like a punishment. It's kind of like a social pain. So it's the same way if I hurt another person's feelings. The reason why I don't like hurting people's feelings is not because it's just good. It's just good not to hurt feelings. It's because it's kind of a self-centered or selfish, as you would call, desire to not want to feel bad yourself, because empathy is not something you choose. Empathy is something that you either have or you don't. So if you have empathy, and you can define yourself with the empathy as well if you want to, but it's not your choice. Like I would actually feel bad if I hurt a person's feelings for no reason. I would feel bad if I were to do like a hit and run. Yeah, I would feel bad, and I don't want to feel bad. I want to kind of correct those emotions, and I think that's fine. I don't think this makes anyone even more like sociopathic or anything like that. It's still like technically selfish because you're trying to avoid pain yourself or some kind of imagined pain. I mean, and like I said, I'm sure like anyone who's taking like psychology 101 classes, they would know that like the thing about psychopaths who do all these heinous things is that they don't there's something called mirror neurons. I'm not even sure if is that what's called, mirror neurons. So like they don't have reactions to hurting other people. So like I personally can't like break a person's arm, right? It takes training for me to be takes training for me to be able to like break a person's arm, because I would cringe myself, that kind of deal. So the reason why I don't break up people's arms is because first of all, I don't want to feel bad, and second, because breaking people's arms makes me feel uncomfortable. Psychopaths, they don't have that, so they go ahead and just break your fucking arm, right? Feeling bad about not helping people is a product of shame, which to me is a landfill emotion. It's a place for everyone else's problems that we carry on our shoulders. Yeah, it's a product of shame. It's like having shame for. It's a social emotion. It's a part of you, but you don't control it. Like you don't choose to have empathy, even though this emotion causes you to be good. If you explain any definition of goodness outside of like your personal life, then literally a psychopath like not understanding empathy, giving to the poor only because he wants to be president or something, that is he's a good person. Then like you would have to say by action he's a good person, but your emotions are a part of you, so but they're not your choice. So it's kind of like so yeah, it's kind of like, it's like you said, yeah, like we're good because we're kind of selfish. Like if it didn't hurt us, if we didn't feel anything from helping a person or hurting a person, would we still do good? I mean, we probably would. I mean, obviously we would, because of like we see psychopaths. Like psychopaths are not just people who like just kill people for no reason. Like psychopaths can just be, you know, would be completely transactional with the relationships, where they don't really feel other people's pain. They don't feel good about helping people. They feel good about getting something back. So when I say that you do need to be selfish to be good, I'm only saying that you need some kind of incentive to be good. Good is not this. It's not a part of being selfish. It's not like separate from being selfish. In my view, it's very self-centered. On the other hand, I think that evil is also due to selfishness. Obviously, it's just that because when you think about being good and evil, like evil is like selfishness is not evil. Evil is usually defined as these topics. I just smell my brain. Holy. I know, like, okay, yeah, this is like we're not going too deep into the rabbit hole for sure. We're kind of just explain, yeah, but like evil, because it's kind of like the same. It's just like selfishness is kind of like the same side. What is it? What's the expression? The same side of the same coin. Whatever it may be, evil also causes selfishness as well, because like for obvious reasons. It's usually because, so the only difference is usually that evil comes from either a personal a personal satisfaction of another person's suffering, or it comes from a disregard of other people's suffering. That's what we would usually call evil. And in a lot of the true crime, uh, like videos that I've listened to, it seems like people, like, they don't. Not all evil people are sadists. Not all people are like caring about like they want to see other people suffer. There are some sadist people out there. And again, psychopaths have the um usually have the view of being sadist. I'm not sure if that's, I don't know if that's true, if psychopaths tend to all be sadists because they're trying to get some kind of rise. They're trying to feel like they don't have, it's like the whole, I don't have any emotions, and so like I need to do something that raises my heart rate a bit, that feels good. um I don't know if all psychopaths have that. Like it is possible theoretically for to have a psychopath where it's like they don't like, nothing really excites them, like even like killing a person, so they don't do it. So they don't have any incentive to do it. And incentive is like everything, of course. I mean, this is why we, in the rule of law, when you have detectives, you have like they search for incentive. Like everything has to have an incentive, otherwise, like you don't really have a case against another person. And so and this is all to say that things don't happen for no reason. Things don't happen just because you're intrinsically good or you're inherently good. It does come all the way back to the self eventually. I think there's no way to pin down how a psychopaths go through their day. There isn't. I'm a sucker for. Oh, okay. We can look at some resources. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, for sure. Oh, let me show this to everyone. I did, so like I did actually research psychopathy because I have a character in my story who's not really a psychopath but is more so of a sociopath. And what I've heard about that is that psychopath can be like, people diagnosing people as psychopath can sometimes be like not really useful because it's just more so of an, it's more so as like a insult than anything else. Discord link. Okay, nice, cool. So like, okay, so socially irresponsible, disregarding, violating rules of others, inability to distinguish right and wrong. And yeah, and this is kind of what I said in the beginning when I said that like, it's not that psychopaths are immoral, they're amoral, meaning they don't, their actions are not based on, yeah, their actions are not based on like, okay, right and wrong. So they don't even if you ask a psychopath, hey, do you think this good, like, do you think it's good to use other people for your own good, for your own means, they would say yes, but they don't understand good. I imagine how someone with a lack of empathy sees everyone with a sort of mix of contempt and pity. A mix of, so pity. I don't know if they would have pity. Like so if a person has a lack of empathy, they probably have a lack of pity too, right? Because pity is usually the understanding of another person's suffering. Like, I think all in all, like, I think you were right that it's kind of hard to know what goes on in like a psychopath's mind. I'm not totally interested anyway because I think everyone is. I think every, so psychopaths are like, so my whole point was that people kind of see psychopaths are as like incredibly selfish, but I think everyone is, but not in a bad way, like you said earlier. I don't think selfishness is wholly bad. if there is something wrong with you, like in the fact that you can't feel empathy, then there's going to be something wrong with being good, or like with all of your other actions. And who's to say that it's wrong? Pity, yeah, I have always thought that pity just means that you feel sorry for the other person. It could, if you're saying, if you're using pity in a way that, more so, there might be a different word that I would use. They would, contempt is the right word, maybe, where I feel like some psychopaths may see our empathy, our emotions as weaknesses, um, or rather, weaknesses, and it would be fair for them to kind of think that, because this society, they're living in a society that's like constantly making movies and worshiping the idea of empathy and having empathy of other people, and how you're not a complete human being, or you're missing something important in your life if you're not empathetic. And psychopaths, if nothing, are completely egoistical, and that's not going to make them feel particularly good. But yeah, with the ability to distinguish right and wrong, yeah, like I said, it's like they don't do actions because they're good or wrong. So if they do, even if they do an evil action, they're not doing it necessarily it's because it's evil. They don't understand the right and wrong. If I know, if someone's I know relative passes, I'm not using the word pity to describe my feelings, but it does mean to cause sorrow. Yeah, yeah, to cause sorrow. Yeah, and I don't think that, like causing, like, yeah, I don't think that like psychopaths are sorrowful of other people's like emotion. But yeah, difficulty with showing remorse or empathy, tendency to lie often. I'm curious about this because it's like, mm, telling a person the truth kind of does require empathy. So you'll find that like if you're like a purely, like if you're disconnected from empathy, then you will find lies. You will find lies a lot more like useful than telling the truth. So I could definitely see that. Manipulating and hurting others, recurring problems with the law, general disregard for towards safety. So now with psychopath, I think, yeah, there's a lot. It was actually kind of difficult to research psychopath when I was writing my character or doing a character study for my character, and it's mostly because in the past people would just call psychopath like villain psychopaths. Like psychopaths were just a trivial name for a villain or a person who didn't care about anything or apparently didn't care about anything. But then, of course, psychology, like psychologists started to really study like psychopaths and stuff, and they kind of realized that it's not that they're doing, yeah, like I said, it's not that they're doing things because they're evil or they believe it's evil and they're just evil. They're doing it mostly because, yeah, they're only doing it because it feels good for them and not the moral kind of good, more so just like beneficial. Um, which again, I'm not too, I'm not too concerned with selfishness because I think everyone's like selfish to a degree. But yeah, my only point, I think I've made the whole points of it. So like coming back to the question on whether or not it's good, like if people are good natured or evil, um, and I'm not claiming to have like any kind of absolute answer, but I think that I think it's like what somebody else said. It's kind of like fluctuating. It's a weird question too because you can also think about like how are we judging whether or not a person is a good person or if a person is an evil person? If a person has a good nature, meaning they want to help a lot of people, but they don't, do we still call them a good person? Or that they just have good intentions? That might be a thing. Um, and if we are saying that a person is only good by the actions that they take, if it actually helps other people, then like a very very selfish businessman who just who does charity to avoid to have some tax exemptions, he basically does more good than most other people. And I'm not sure if I want to go with oh well, you're only good by the actions that you do kind of definition, because any businessman who gives to charity just to avoid taxes themselves would kind of just be gooder than like everyone. So in my opinion, I think like goodness is like, it ties very very heavily into the empathy that you, not only the empathy but the understanding. I think that empathy is the understanding that other people suffer. That's it's the under it's deeper than feeling sad or feeling sorry for another person, but it's also like, okay, well, this person is suffering. And of course, on a deeper level, we've talked about this, or we at least touched on this in the past, but I think that empathy is really the understanding that we're all the same thing, that we're all eyes, um we're all basically like the same thing. And with different experiences, I am experiencing that I am Grant, like I'm this in this body, and you're experiencing something different, but we're the same thing. We both feel pain because we are both the same thing, but we're both like in other words consciousness. So that's of course my spiritual beliefs. I won't go down that road too much because that's a little bit out there. But I think empathy is not just like is an understanding of something deeper than just, oh well, for some reason I feel like, I'm hurting when I see another person um bleed out on the corner, or like stuff like that. Like, and so like I think it's a deeper understanding than just the mirror neurons that fire in your brain when you cringe at like a person getting injured. Um, so and that's obvious too, because I read somewhere. I feel like we've talked about this, but I read somewhere where they say that doctors score at least partially on the sociopathic scale, because they don't have like a real reaction to someone else being super injured. Like they could be looking at like a bone sticking out of a person's arm, and they don't really cringe at it. They're just kind of like, okay. Even they can have empathy. It's just that their empathy can be a deeper understanding that like then, oh, that person hurts because I'm cringing. But I don't know, man. I feel like it's kind of hard to like really understand like a person, like whether or not like a person, like if humans themselves, like the question is really like, if are humans good or they're evil. I think both. Or at least like I like to think that humans are mostly good, except when they become more individualistic, or they start well, I can't say it, distancing themselves from, say, like the rest of society, like social, like if they fail socially, that's when you start to see some evil tendencies in like with with racism, with Nazis and all that shit. Like the worst atrocities have been committed because of us dehumanizing, separating ourselves from the other person or from the other man. So again, like I do think that we do have a good nature, and the only and by definition we have a good nature because we are social species. We are meant to have a social identity, or like even a group identity to take care of other people. Like we have that nature for sure. We want to help other people. There is also like a study that I don't know if I remember the study, but they were studying that if the whole theory of people, like if there's like a huge amount of chaos that's going on, if humans would actually band together and try to help other human beings, or if they would just all become selfish and they would all break into stores and kill their fellow human beings for their own good, like what would they do? And it seems like they don't do that. It's not like every man for themselves. It's rarely that way. If anything, it's every group for themselves. Humans or people will tend to gather in groups of with other people of values that they have. So so that's kind of like a half answer, because like we're very very social, and so we do want the, like ultimately speaking, we want the good for other people because we want good for ourselves. If you have a group of people who would feed you, then you want to support the group because that group is going to feed you at the end of the day. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that you can put in, like, this is all to say. I think we've already covered it, but you can't put selfishness on the scale of evil. I think selfishness, or at least, maybe that's a loaded word, and I can use, there's some other word, but for the lack of better word, I think selfishness causes like your own desires, your own incentives can lead into good things, and you contributing to a group. And so like I guess there are two ways. So from what I see, I think there are two distinct goodness in people. It's the social good, where we understand that we have like some deep understanding of our fellow man suffering, and we don't like that because, again, I think I personally think that empathy is the understanding that that person is you, in like if it sounds crazy, it sounds crazy, but that person is like experiencing the same things that you are, so you're the same thing, and it comes from selfishness of you not wanting to feel bad, kind of like an enforcement, like shame and stuff like that. On the other hand, yeah, there is evil, like we are evil, but we don't usually do evil because we think it's evil. We do evil like whether it be by emotion, passion, or it be for some kind of twisted moral justification for it. It can sometimes even just mean that you don't have, that people who do evil things, they don't have the understanding that it's evil, that it actually causes other people to suffer, because they're so blinded by what they want to do, that they don't consider, okay, what is this gonna look like for this other person. But yeah, to answer the question, to close it out, is kind of both. There's a parable I've read that Kida turns good and evil in his head. Kinda. Oh, Kida. I thought you meant Kida. But a parable that where that kind of turn good and evil in his head. I would be curious about that. I mean, because like, if you want to be like, you could. If I think that the moment of cause effect is lost or ignored, yeah, yeah, and I think it's if you could go the route of saying that good and evil actually is a social construct. Um, I think social constructs do have a reality to it, or that it's subjective. Is probably the better word. Like it's too subjective. It's kind of just like, um, and it's like it's just like completely subjective, and that's kind of true because if you ask a person, like a Christian, like your old apologist Christian, what good and evil is, it's not gonna have anything to do with empathy. I think it does. I super am gonna be arrogant about this. I think that good and evil is directly tied to empathy. Otherwise, there's nothing about it. A lot of people lack self-control and understanding how cause and effect works, and people are very reactive. The good thing about constructs, though, they can be reconstructed. True. Very true. Um, as in, if they're made up, they're always adaptable. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. So like, so when I think about religion, I think that religion is not wholly bad. Like when they talk about morality, it's not wholly bad. I think the only bad thing to go down, the route to go down, is to try and convince a person that good and evil has nothing to do with whether or not you feel like whether or not it's it has nothing to do with like well-being of other people. If your definition of good and of good is that it has nothing to do with another person's well-being or promoting another's well-being, I think you're absolutely wrong. Because there are some, because you can kind of see how Christians or like some Christian apologists talk about this, where they will say that a person burning in hell for all of eternity is a good thing because they're being punished, and God is like the definition of good, and I'm not allowed, and we humans, we're not allowed to define what good is. It's kind of like, oh, well, he created the universe, but, you know, so he gets to decide what's really good. And I think that's, again, that's dangerous, because even in the Bible, like, even if you want to get biblical, even in the Bible, it seems that good and evil really does come from empathy as well. It's just that uh, Christians, or at least modern day Christians, have had to divorce that idea of like good and evil being about empathy, because it doesn't, like, it would be clearer that, say, killing a person because they're homosexual, or like because in the Bible, or punishing a person because they committed adultery, um, is obviously not good. And so like they kind of have to rearrange, or at least like refine the definition so that they can fit goodness with the God, because who wants to worship a bad or evil God? Hey Butch, how you doing? We're just talking, we're just chilling. Let me see this Discord link though. There we go. So when I say empathy, I say so when I say empathy, I'm more so using that as like like empathy is just one of the factors that encourages you to be good. So like I think earlier I did say that like there are two factors of like there are two causes of us being good people. One of it is like just selfishness. Uh, just because like a rich person, for example, may want to give to charity just to escape tax exemptions, that's still a good thing. Um, and two, like empathy encourages us to be good because it uh it kind of, and again, it's selfish. It's still selfish, but it's like because I don't want to feel bad, so I'm helping. Yeah, I'm helping other people because I don't want to feel bad about like not helping them, and so like that's usually what I mean by empathy. But yeah, no, but yeah, I agree. um. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, I don't mind rephrasing everything, and I don't mind being wrong. So if I'm wrong about something, don't. Of course, don't be afraid to be like, hey, calling you out on your shit. But okay, so I think this is short enough. Most of us divide up our life experiences into those we like and those we don't. But Taoist masters us to teach us to look deeper. In the flow of yin and yang, everything is constantly changing into its opposite. The more we live with awareness of the inevitable ties in Tao, of the Tao, the more superficial and misguided to reject some experiences and to try to hold on to others. It is better to accept the wholeness of life. Okay, so the traditional story illustrates these teachings. When the old farmer Stalin wins a prize at a country show, his neighbor calls round to congratulate him, but the old farmer says, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" The next day, some thieves come and steal his valuable animal. His neighbor comes and commiserates with him, but the old man replies, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" A few days later, the spirited Stalin escapes from the thieves and joins a herd of wild mares, leading them back to the farm. The neighbor calls to share the farmer's joy, but the farmer says, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" The following day, while trying to break in one of the mares, the farmer's son, the following day, while trying to break in one of the mares, the farmer's son is thrown and fractures his leg. The neighbors call to share the farmer's sorrow, but the old man's attitude remains the same as before. The following week, and the army passes by, forcibly conscripting soldiers of war, but they do not take the farmer's son because he cannot walk. The neighbor thinks to himself, "Who knows what is good and what is bad?" and realizes the old farmer must be a Taoist sage. Yeah. Yeah, that's like so this is more so like consequentialist, and I'm a consequentialist, by the way. I believe that like whether or not something is truly good or truly a good option or a bad option, it kind of depends on well, that's not true. That's not true. But when I say I'm a consequence, you know what that means. It means that I think that ultimately speaking, like whether or not something is a good choice or a bad choice depends solely on like the consequence of it. And we don't know, and this is what is true. We don't know what is good or bad because for a lot of things, we don't know the consequence of it. So we might be thinking that the interesting thing to think about though is there's a streamer that I watch. Can't remember who said this. Can something feel bad but not be objectively bad? Can anything be objective? No, I think that but not to be can they be um kind of I think that's kind of true. So like are you asking like I don't think that anything can be objective. No. And mixed effect. As you said, is valid. But okay, so like when I think about if stuff that you say is valid but not necessarily truth, I think of things that are like rational, but or they follow rationality, and emotions fall into the definition of rationality, but they are also like but also could be false. So there's a way to answer that. So if you feel bad about something, so if I feel bad about, let's just say, because I think anxiety does get you some feeling bad sometimes. If I feel bad for let's just say that here's a good example, because this kind of happened to me in some ways. So let's just say I am, when because I have dreadlocks and everything, sometimes I put dreadlocks into braids, and it makes it acts kind of protective, as I'm trying to do a story. I'm trying to make an example, so it's not okay. So we all know that black people, okay, we can be have very thick hair when it's into braids. If there was another person who doesn't have to be white, but might be obviously white, who accidentally drops a book on my head, thinking that he hurt me because it's a heavy book, and it dropped right on my head, but instead it really, like, my braids catches, like, it absorbs all of the impact, and he's like, okay, sorry dude, I'm so sorry, I feel bad for that. It must have really, really hurt, because when that book fell on my head, like, it really, really hurt for days, and I was like concussed and shit. Like, let's just say that he's like, it's true. And I say, no, it's alright, like, yeah, it's alright, don't worry about it. And I just walk away, and now he feels bad that he has caused me harm. He might feel bad that he hurt me, but objectively speaking, he did not hurt me. Like, it didn't hurt. So I think, like, that would be the answer to the question. It could, like, objectively speaking, you didn't. Yeah, he made an assumption based on experience. And it's like, yeah, objectively speaking, he did not hurt me. There was no harm caused, but he believed through his anxiety and by experience that I caused this guy great harm, and now he has, like, a hurt head. I mean, that's, like, a very, very basic example. One that came from, like, my true story is, so, like, the true story of it was, like, no one hurt me, but when I had dreadlocks and had dreadlocks in the braids, I remember being at Costco, or was it hold on a second, there's something in my throat. Oh. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, when I was at Sam's Club, which is, like, basically a warehouse, I bumped my head on, like, a steel beam. Like, it was steel, like one of those hard, thick beams. I bumped my head on it, and I had my braids in, and my head actually went thump, but I didn't feel anything. And, like, this nice white lady in front of me, like, jumped, like, as if, ow, that must have really, really hurt. And I walked out from under the steel beam, and she's like, oh my god, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, like, I'm fine. Like, yeah, thank god I have my hair up in braids. And I don't know if she understood that I just meant that, it was just too thick for me to feel anything, but she still had that look on her face as if, like, I just had a concussion. Oh, trust me, like, even with the braids in, my head still, like, vibrated like that. Like, I still, like, flinched a bit because I thought I was gonna feel some pain. But that's a real life story of that. But yeah, I think like, what's good and what, like, good and bad, good and evil is kind of like, you do have to go. Oh, no problem. Thanks for stopping by, dude. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. But you've made some good points. But yeah, but when it comes to, like, good and evil, it's like, I tend to think that humans are both good and evil. I don't know, like, the answer to what I think it's in both of our natures to conclude.